Hello viewers, welcome to Newsweek South Asia, a show where we will provide you fresh insights into South Asia's geopolitical, strategic and security situation. Let's begin the show with the headlines first. Global protests highlight enforced disappearances in Pakistan. Surge in terror attacks as terrorists shift focus from Kashmir to Jammu. And Afghan women sing in defiance of Taliban laws, silencing their voices. August 30th marks the International Day of the Victims of Enforced Disappearances, a day dedicated to shedding light on the grim reality of enforced disappearances, a tactic often employed by states to silence dissent and instill fear. This year, the issue took center stage as protests were held across Europe by the Free Balochistan Movement and various human rights organizations, highlighting the ongoing crisis in Pakistan's regions, including Balochistan, Sindh and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. These protests underscore the dire human rights situation and the growing demand for global action.
On August 30 every year, the United Nations observes the International Day for Enforced Disappearance all over the world. Enforced disappearances involve the arrest or abduction of a person by or on behalf of the state, followed by a refusal by the same authorities to acknowledge it. The move is used as a means to silence the opposition and spread terror. In London, the Free Balochistan Movement, a group advocating for Baloch independence, organized a protest outside the British Prime Minister's residence. Demonstrators carried banners, placards and photos of the disappeared, chanting against the severe human rights abuses in Balochistan. The protest attracted not only Baloch activists but also British human rights advocates, all united in their call for justice for the victims of enforced disappearances.
I'm here today as a British person to speak up for my Baloch brothers and sisters, what they have been experiencing in Balochistan, where there have been enforced disappearances, where their family members get arrested and then they disappear and then they don't get seen again, or their mutilated bodies are found much later. We as British people should be speaking up, and we are calling on Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, to speak against what the Pakistani Authority are doing to Baloch people, because it is a genocide.
Meanwhile, in Amsterdam, the Free Balochistan Movement's Netherlands branch held a similar demonstration, drawing attention to the brutal practice of enforced disappearances perpetrated by Pakistani forces. These protests emphasize that enforced disappearances are a widespread issue, tarnishing Pakistan's human rights record. However, the issue is not isolated to Balochistan. Reports of enforced disappearances have surfaced across multiple regions in Pakistan, including Sindh, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and parts of Punjab, where activists, journalists, human rights defenders, students and political opponents have been targeted. On this International Day, the GS Sindh Freedom Movement made a powerful appeal to the international community, including the United Nations and Amnesty International, urging them to intervene and help recover missing persons from Sindh, Balochistan, Pashtun areas, Saraiki regions, Gilgit-Baltistan and Kashmir.
जिनके रियासती एजेंसियों घर या रोड हलंदे खंबे पंहिंजे अकूबत खाननि में विझनि थियूं, जिते खेनि मुख़्तलिफ़ टार्चरनि खे मुंहुं ॾियणो पवे थो। उबतो लटकाइण, नक में चुन जो पाणी विझणु, नह कढणु, ओजागु कराइणु। रियासती इदारा आज़ादी पसंद सिंधी कारकुननि खे मारे मारे कॾहिं ज़हनी त कॾहिं वरी जिस्मानी तौर मफ़लूज करे छॾनि था, त कॾहिं वरी इन्हनि जा लाश तोहफ़ो करे मोकिलिया वञनि था। हिकु अंदाज़े मूजिबि सन 2002 खां वठी 2024 ताईं सिंध मां 5000 खां वधीक GSN जे कारकुननि खे मिसिंग कयो वियो आहे, जेका सरासर इंसानी हक़नि जी ख़िलाफ़ वर्ज़ी आहे। पाकिस्तान जे ॿियनि मज़लूम क़ौमुनि ते बि रियासती ॾाढ जारी आहे ऐं बलोचनि जा 22,000 क़ौमी कारकुन जबरी तौर गुम कया विया आहिनि। पश्तूननि जा 4,000 माण्हू गुम आहिनि, जॾहिं त सराइकी, गिलगिती ऐं कश्मीरी क़ौमी कारकुन भी वॾे अंग में रियासती इदारनि हथां गुम कया विया आहिनि। इन्फोर्स्ड डिसअपीयरेंस जे आलमी ॾियारे ते GSN फ्रीडम मूवमेंट अपील करे थी यूनाइटेड नेशंस, एमनेस्टी इंटरनेशनल समेत आलमी ज़मीर खे त जबरी गुम कयल सिंधी, बलोच, पश्तून, सराइकी, गिलगिती ऐं कश्मीरी कारकुननि खे पाकिस्तानी इदारनि खां बाज़ियाब करायो वञे।
Enforced disappearances remain a critical human rights issue in Pakistan, with new cases continually coming to light. Despite the pledges of successive governments to criminalize the practices, there has been a very slow movement on legislation which is equal to nothing, while people continue to be forcibly disappeared with impunity. The Pakistani government's inaction and failure to address these disappearances have led to increasing frustration and distrust among affected communities.
While Pakistan frequently positions itself as an advocate for the rights of Kashmiris on the international stage, its actions in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir paint a different picture. Reports of widespread human rights abuses in PoK and Gilgit-Baltistan continue to surface as Pakistani authorities clamp down on dissent, stifle free speech, and neglect the basic rights of the region's residents. Let's delve into the growing crisis in this region, where the repression has become a daily reality for thousands of Kashmiris.
Pakistan has consistently portrayed itself as a defender of Kashmiri rights, raising the issue of Kashmir at platforms like the United Nations. This has helped Pakistan garner international sympathy for what it calls the plight of Kashmiris. But when it comes to Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the narrative shifts. Human rights organizations have repeatedly accused Pakistan's military and intelligence agencies of severe human rights violations in PoK. These include arbitrary arrests, torture, and targeting of activists who challenge the government's control or military presence in the region. Recently, Zamil Maqsood, President of the Foreign Affairs Committee for the United Kashmir People's National Party, expressed deep concerns about the ongoing violations in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. He highlighted how activists participating in peaceful protests are systematically targeted by the Pakistani authorities.
Pakistan is targeting all those who have vehemently participated in the Long March to reduce electricity bill and to revive all the subsidies which were given before. So it is a flour subsidy, it was subsidy on electricity bills and on many other essentials that was dismantled or taken away by the last government of Pakistan. So now, especially the student organizations, the young political stalwarts have been abducted, have been tortured in Zafrabad, in Bagh, in Rawalakot, and in other areas. And the case of Miss Asma Batul, Ali Shamrez, and Raja Mudassar are one of them. So approximately 300 people who were the activists and who were previously have been working with the intelligence agencies are disappeared, and there is no data available of all these disappearances and torture, detention, illegal confinement, etc. So at this moment, the situation of human rights in these areas is very bleak, and we demand international institutions as well as human rights organizations to take serious cognizance of this unfortunate situation which our people are going through right now.
Life in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir is marked by fear and intimidation. Peaceful protests are frequently met with brutal crackdowns by security forces. Protest leaders and demonstrators are often detained without due process, and those who demand political autonomy or independence from Pakistan face severe charges of sedition or treason. Many have disappeared without a trace. The media too has been silenced in the region. Local journalists face constant threats and media censorship has escalated in recent years. Reporters are forced to adhere to the state's narrative, and those who attempt to expose the truth risk being harassed or detained. Independent coverage of the situation is nearly impossible, with security forces closely monitoring media activities.
In PoK, basically it is worsened than the other areas because there are human rights organizations functioning in the provinces or in other areas, but not in PoK. There is no credible organization or credible media organization which is functioning in PoK and Gilgit-Baltistan. That's why the outer world have not been informed about constant violation of human rights since decades. There is no national or electronic media presented in Gilgit-Baltistan or also in various areas of Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So because of non-availability of current information, current news, we collect all this information through our friends, through our comrades, through our party comrades in various areas.
This situation is compounded by the region's economic deprivation. Many areas in PoK remain severely underdeveloped, lacking essential infrastructure such as schools, hospitals, and proper roads. Residents claim that Pakistan's government has not invested in the region's development but has instead exploited its resources, leaving the local population frustrated and feeling like second-class citizens in their own land. Human rights groups have called on the international community to take urgent action. They argue that Pakistan's control over PoK has only increased the suffering of its people with little concern for their rights or well-being. Activists are demanding independent investigations into the abuses and greater international pressure on Pakistan to ensure the protection of the region's residents.
In yet another disturbing development, terrorists targeted security forces in Jammu's Rajouri district, escalating violence in a region that has remained largely peaceful for years. The recent attacks are part of a larger shift in Pakistan-backed terrorism, with terror groups now focusing on destabilizing Jammu. Experts warn that these coordinated strikes signal a deliberate attempt to spread unrest across the region. We bring you an in-depth report.
On September 4, unidentified terrorists opened fire at a Jammu and Kashmir police team in the Thana Mandi area of Rajouri district. Both the Indian Army and police forces swiftly launched a massive cordon and search operation to track down the attackers. Additional security forces have been deployed to the region, and the situation is under close monitoring. For months now, experts have noted an unsettling pattern. Pakistan's deep state is actively attempting to shift terror operations from Kashmir to Jammu. Areas extending from Poonch to Kathua, particularly the mountainous Pir Panjal and Kishtwar ranges, have become new hotspots for terrorist activities. The intent behind these terror strikes is clear: to destabilize the Jammu region and incite violence in a zone that has been relatively peaceful for decades.
Pakistan is desperate. We had conducted the G20 successfully. The Lok Sabha elections have been conducted successfully with the largest ever strength that went to polls. There is going to be assembly election soon. Pakistan does not want to spread fear and is now targeting the security forces. Except for the Riyasi attack where 9 civilians got killed when they attacked the bus. Otherwise, all the attacks that have been taken, encounters that have taken place in the last 15-20 days have been against the security forces. Obviously, there is a shift in strategy of Pakistan. India too needs to shift its strategy into an offensive defense strategy. Within the valley, we got to recreate our security grid and the intelligence grid as far as Jammu region is concerned, and also eliminate not only the terrorists but all the supporters of theirs in terms of overground workers.
The modus operandi of these Pakistani-backed terror groups is familiar, using local overground workers for logistical support and exploiting well-hidden hideouts across the region. The recent terror attacks in Kathua, Doda and Riyasi bear an eerie resemblance to the terror-stricken districts of South Kashmir, signaling a deliberate move by Pakistan to extend its terror network into Jammu. The surge in coordinated attacks points to a larger strategic intent, one that seeks to spread terror and fear among the local population, while undermining India's efforts to restore peace in Jammu and Kashmir. Since mid-2021, at least 26 terror attacks have occurred in the Jammu division, according to the South Asian Terrorism Portal. This marks a clear effort to revive militancy in Jammu, especially after the scrapping of Jammu and Kashmir's special status in 2019.
I am quite certain that they have got adequate internal support from elements within that area. So there are some villagers or some other people who are providing them the intelligence and the local support. That much is evident. Simply eliminating the terrorists or these Pakistani military people who have come in is not going to be the answer. I think we require much sterner measures. And in my view, as a start, simply as a start, we know where the general routes of infiltration where these people have come from, either in the Doda sector or in Kathua or wherever else they have come from. We know those areas that they have come from there. And it is quite evident that if they have come from those areas, they have been supported by the Pakistani military posts which are located alongside. I think it is time for us to destroy each and every post which has carried out these activities.
Despite India's relentless counter-terrorism efforts, peace in Jammu and Kashmir remains fragile. Pakistan continues to harbor and support terror groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed, using its intelligence agency ISI to nurture and promote anti-India forces. These terror outfits backed by Pakistan remain committed to destabilizing the region, keeping the cycle of violence alive. In response to the recent attacks, large-scale search operations are ongoing, with senior police and army officers personally overseeing the efforts. The battle against terrorism is far from over, but India's security forces are determined to counter every move made by Pakistan's terror machinery.
In the face of relentless oppression, Afghan women are rising against the Taliban's brutal regime. Their acts of defiance are reverberating across the globe, challenging a regime intent on silencing them. Afghan women, defiant in the face of the Taliban's oppressive regime, are using social media to broadcast their resistance through powerful revolutionary songs and messages. Despite the Taliban's harsh new laws restricting women's freedom, including bans on singing and public speaking, Afghan women remain undeterred. A report.
Afghan women, both inside and outside the country, are turning to social media to voice their resistance against the Taliban's draconian laws. Through revolutionary songs, they are defying the Taliban's attempts to stifle their voices. One song poignantly asks, "Will you seal the silence of my mouth until the second order?" A direct challenge to the oppressive regime's anticipated future decrees. These acts of resistance highlight the ongoing struggle against the Taliban's repressive regime.
بیا دیوارها را در نویسیم و جای ضعف خود باور نویسیم بگیر دستم بده دستت که با هم کتاب سرنوشت سر نویسیم هیچ قدرتی نمیتواند صدا و تصویر زنان را حذف کند ما با همین صداها بر علیه نابرابری ایستادگی خواهیم کرد و شکست شما را حتمی خواهیم ساخت پیروزی از آن ماست.
In a sweeping move to tighten its grip on Afghan society, Taliban's supreme leader Hibatullah Akhundzada has ordered officials to enforce a harsh new morality law aimed at further curtailing women's rights. The recently published 35-article decree mandates severe restrictions, including a ban on women singing, reading aloud in public, or letting their voices be heard outside their homes. This oppressive law not only strips women of their basic rights, but also serves to enforce the Taliban's austere vision of Islamic society. The new laws also force women to wear thick clothes that completely cover their bodies, including their faces, while in public, and bans them from looking directly at men they are not related to by blood or marriage. Those who fail to comply with the restrictions can be detained and punished in a manner deemed appropriate by Taliban officials.
خب در طول این مدت که 3 سال طالبان آمدید به افغانستان و حاکم شدین برنامه‌های زیادی برای حذف زنان داشتین از شروع مکاتب که برای خانم‌ها مکاتب بسته کردن و همچنین هم تو دانشگاه‌ها و مرور زمان کار از پیششان گرفتن اکنون فشارهایی که جهان بر سر اینا میاره و یا رسمیت به اینا نمیده یا تعامل با اینا نمیکنه اینها همین فشارها را بر سر زنان میارن میتونن از این برنامه ها و از این فشارها با استفاده از زنها این برنامه ها را کاملا تطبیق بکنن در کشور و سودش از جهان بگیرن.
The Taliban's reign has seen a steady erosion of women's rights since they regained power in 2021. Women and girls have been systematically excluded from education, banned from nearly all forms of paid employment, and prohibited from accessing public spaces like parks and gyms. Earlier this year, the Taliban even announced the reinstatement of stoning as a punishment for adultery, a chilling reminder of their brutal past.
The shocking level of oppression of Afghan women and girls is immeasurably cruel.
The international community has responded with strong condemnation, refusing to recognize the Taliban as Afghanistan's legitimate government. The United Nations has been clear recognition will not be considered as long as the Taliban's ban on female education and employment remain in place. Despite this, the Taliban dismisses global criticism as unwelcome interference, leaving Afghanistan's future hanging in the balance.
فرصت‌های خیلی خوبی است که طالبان جهان میتونه از این منابعی که طالبان را میتونه فربی بکنه جلوگیری بکنه اونا رو دعوت نکنه و اونا پول گزارت طالبان نکنه و بیشتر با مردم تعامل بکنه و ببینه که حقیقت طالبان چی هست.
As the world watches, Afghan women continue to resist, determined to reclaim their rights and their future. The fight against the Taliban's repressive regime is far from over, and these brave women are at the forefront, refusing to be silenced.
And with that, We come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We will be back next week with more news, views and analysis from the subcontinent. Meanwhile, do keep writing to us at nwsa@aniint.com. This is Pratiksha Mishra signing off on behalf of the entire team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.